Joining us live now is Centre Alliance Senator and key crossbencher Rex Patrick. Rex, thank you for your time.
Good morning.
Now, what do you make of this phone call between Scott Morrison and Mick Fuller? Should it have happened?
Oh, look, I think it's entirely inappropriate. When you've got a minister being investigated by the police, the Prime Minister should not be making a call. The question needs to be asked, what did they talk about? If it was a substantive call, then indeed highly inappropriate, and if it was a nothing call, it shouldn't have been made.
In terms of trying to ascertain whether the investigation's happening, doesn't that make sense ahead of a judgment on a minister's future?
I think if that was necessary, a staffer could have made that call. A staffer could have got in contact, or even through formal channels, through Mr Dutton's office, perhaps through the AFP. It didn't have to be the Prime Minister.
But even if they're friends?
Even more inappropriate.
It's even more inappropriate, you believe, because they know each other?
Well, because they know each other, they have to be very, very careful. It creates all sorts of perceptions, and as we know in politics, it's not only about being clean, it's also about being seen to be clean.
Now, if we look at some of the key legislation heading to the upper house, we've got the ensuring integrity debate happening at the moment. It looks like it is set to pass, with Jackie Lambie and Pauline Hanson at least sitting with the government to allow the debate to happen. Do you think there's any more concessions to come, though?
Look, the signal that Jackie Lambie and One Nation gave when they sat with the government tells you, firstly, the government is confident that they'll get their votes, and indeed that they are supporting. There may be amendments that are moved by other parties, including Labor, and we will of course consider those on the merits.
When you talk about the various changes that have been made, even the Greens this morning, Nick McKim, conceded that they have toughened this legislation in terms of how high the mark is for deregistering a union, but still not enough to placate with the Greens or the Labor Party.
Well, both of those parties have said they wouldn't support it under any condition anyway. So, look, there are strong protections in the bill. There's the demerit system, there's the systematic requirement, there's the requirement for a judge to consider the gravity of the offence, and the way legislation is framed up, all of those things need to be looked at as a package. So you can try and pull apart the demerit system if you like, but that's not an appropriate way to do that.
But do you accept their argument has merit in terms of the disparity in the treatment between the union vis-a-vis a corporation?
Well, I'll just make an observation. I'm not in any way defending Westpac for their activities. It's quite abhorrent. But I do note that they've now had 3 senior people resign or stepping down. I can't say that for the CFMEU, for example.
And there is the option for the regulator of the bank, APRA, if they don't take the appropriate action, to then call for resignations. They can order it. And that doesn't exist in unions.
Well, that's correct. This bill seeks to deal with not the good unions, but the unions that are engaged in systematic misconduct. And the bill stems from judicial rulings and judicial pronouncements about frustration with some unions simply not complying with the rule of law in this country, and that cannot be allowed. That's why we had to make sure that some remedial powers were in place, but we've modified the bill. The bill is a substantially different bill to what initially entered into the House, and it has significant protections for all the good unions that do really good work in this country.
And in terms of the other bill that we've been discussing in recent weeks, the Medivac repeal, it sounds like from your discussion and our interview earlier in the week that Jackie Lambie only wants to amend that bill. Is that right?
Well, I don't know the exact details of what Jackie is considering, and that really is a question for Jackie, but she has made at least some statements on that along those lines.
And would you support that?
We would have to look at the amendments and see what it was that she's proposing. We're not aware of exactly what it is that she's proposing. I know that she's in conversations with the government. We would always give her the respect if she moved amendments to look at those amendments and consider them.
Fundamentally, though, you believe that that bill has been a positive, it's been working?
The bill is a very important bill to make sure that people who need medical treatment on Nauru and Manus get proper medical treatment. And I don't think any Australian wants to see people denied medical treatment. If there are some small improvements needed to the bill to tweak it, to make it better, we would consider those amendments.
And if we look at some of the things you've been working on from your crossbench capacity, Witness J, there's been some progress there. Can you walk us through what that case is and what?
Well, this is an extraordinary case, and absolutely the Parliament needs to take a very close look at that. We've had a former Army officer that has then moved on to become working as a civilian in the intelligence sector, being charged secretly, being put through a trial secretly, being convicted secretly, being sentenced secretly, and then being imprisoned in an ACT prison secretly. And that is not what anyone would expect in a system that values open justice. We criticise other jurisdictions for the conduct of secret trials, and now we find ourselves in exactly that position. This is a really important issue, and the Parliament needs to engage now with the government in respect of oversight. What happened here?
Yeah, because even those who had imprisoned him weren't entitled to know the full details of his charges, his convictions and so on. So yeah, this is quite bizarre, this situation.
Look,
no one basically knows anything about him except that he served as a captain in the Army intelligence in Afghanistan.
That's correct. And so even the ACT Attorney General was unaware of the fact that that this person was being held in an ACT prison.
So what sort of thing would warrant that?
Well, that's the question.
Can you think as a former military person yourself?
I cannot think of what would justify that level of secrecy. There may be elements of his conduct that warranted secrecy. There may be elements where the court needed to be closed. But this was done entirely secretly.
And just finally, we've been covering the drought quite extensively on Sky News, and you've had some reaction to the New South Wales Premier's John Barilaro's Murray-Darling threat. Sorry, that's Deputy Premier.
Yeah, he's the Deputy Premier. Look, this is 6 times in the last 2 years that New South Wales has threatened to walk away from the plan. They are basically being the petulant child, and from my perspective, stop posturing, pull out of the plan, and the Commonwealth will take over.
Okay, Rex, thanks so much. Senator Patrick from the Centre Alliance.